with you 6.4 and 6.5. 6.4 is all about sampling and estimates. Very important that we know the difference between an estimate of the sample means, the mean, sample variances, and sample proportions. If you look in your textbook on page 290, when you sample means, there are a few important things to remember. The sample means target the value of the population mean, meaning when you sample a lot of sample means, they should come out to be pretty close to the actual mean of the population. Also, the distribution of sample means tends to be normal. And so if you do samples of means, they will be normally distributed. Very important, as the variance is not. The variance is on page 292. The sample variances target the value of the population variance. However, the distribution of sample variances tends to be distributed skewed to the right. Now later on, in later chapters, we will learn that skewed to the right means it's not normal, it's actually chi-squared. But for right now, you just need to learn that it is not normal, skewed to the right. There's also one for proportions. And the proportion one is on page 293. The sample proportions target the value of the population proportion. The distribution of sample proportions tends to be normal. So again, there are some questions that ask about this. If you're sampling means, they're normal. If you're sampling variances, they are skewed to the right. If you're sampling proportions, they should be normal as well. So very important that you know those three. Next, we're going to look at how to change your z-score when you're given a sample size. And the formula that you'll need is on page 303. It's exactly the same as the usual normal z-score for a normal distribution, except that the population variance is now sigma over the square root of n, meaning the sample size. So everything is exactly the same in the numerator. It's still x minus mu. However, the denominator is now divided by sigma over the square root of n. So when they give you a sample size, just remember you have to include that in your calculations. And again, that formula is on page 303. Another formula that you do encounter in this section, 6.5, is the finite corrections factor. And the finite corrections factor is on page 308. Now, very important that when you use the finite corrections factor, it has the following criteria. Your sample has to be greater than 0.5 times the population. The finite corrections factor is used when you sample from a relatively small population. If you use a really large population, it does not matter. It doesn't change things. But if you sample from a smaller population, then you have to use the finite corrections factor. And that is the square root of capital N minus little n over capital N minus 1. And capital N is your population. Little n is your sample. So you use that formula and calculate it from there. And what that does is that is in your denominator, and it gets multiplied by your sigma over the square root of n. And use that now in your z-score formula.